WinterLatinaShow.
Hosted by IDM.
And we are live and nothing's breaking.
Welcome to another fun-filled episode of the Winter Latina Show. For some of you, this is a holiday week. It was Canada Day on July 1st. It's America's birthday today, and possibly other people might be celebrating elsewhere. Canadians and Americans celebrate at the same time. So let me just click out of too many things going on here. There we go. And we're going to do another story time with you guys. And I think, as you might have noticed, that we're sort of been alternating having guests, doing story time. Hopefully this is a format that you find interesting. Definitely weigh in the comments if there's anything else you'd like to see, or if there's something you'd like to see more of. But I think the beauty of historical story times is that Marcelo knows little to nothing about what I'm going to tell him about, unlike having guests.
I know little to nothing about most of we talk about, so.
Most of what we talk about, right? So we're going to do another, it's a little bit of a deep dive, but on a very particular story. So Marcelo, imagine this scenario. It is July 15th. It's the middle of summer. You are in a very large, dusty city. It's hot. It's not humid. It's kind of more of a dry heat. It's definitely beautiful. There is a young woman who lives in the city. She really likes certain things about the city. For instance, she can go to an open air market in the summer and buy the freshest fruit from all across the region. She might choose to get delicious, juicy watermelon, for instance, something that's available seasonally in the summer at this market, or other types of delights, because this is a very large country where she's living in a very large city. She's in the city. A lot of people are out of the city. This is when they typically vacation. Some of them opt to go to the sea, have a really lovely vacation by the beach, go swimming, relax from having a difficult year at work, much like they deserve. More people choose to go to their cottages, not too far away from the city, maybe within an hour or two, maybe a little bit farther. They opt to have a very kind of lazy vacation. Now, there are mosquitoes. Not everyone likes mosquitoes, but other than mosquitoes, there are a lot of things that you can do when you go to your summer cottage. You can relax by the river, you can swim, you can get the freshest fruit, you can go pick wild strawberries, basically have a really nice lazy vacation. Children love it. So lots of people live the city at this time, but it's still a nice place to be. She kind of has to be in the city for work purposes. And it's summer, it gets dark pretty late. It's July 15th. It's actually 1977. So imagine the fashion from that period. And very interesting fashion that to a certain extent has come back for better or for worse. And she decides to go to the movies. She actually decides to go to the very, very last screening. So even though it gets dark late because it's the middle of summer, it's actually getting dark. It's the last screening. She drives to the movies and she goes to a really major movie theater in this large city. She parks her car, she gets out, and she opts to see a movie that's called The Red and the Black. You may not know the title, but it's actually based on a novel by a French author, Stendhal. I'm sort of mixing French and English in terms of my pronunciation right now. It's a 19th century novel. It's an interesting novel because it's sort of a historical novel discussing the social contradictions in the French society, first after the French Revolution of 1789, the rise of Napoleon, and the Napoleonic Wars. So the movie is based on that novel. So she decides that this would be an interesting piece of cinematic art to watch on this hot summer evening. And she parks her car and she's heading to the movie theater. But she's feeling a little bit paranoid. She has this feeling like someone is following her. Is it a stalker? Is it a thug that she doesn't know? She just feels a little bit uncomfortable. And as she's heading to this movie theater, she doesn't actually make it known that she feels a little bit paranoid. She's not actively, overtly looking, to the left, to the right, to show this person that she thinks might be following her, that she's concerned. But she definitely has this kind of unsettled feeling in the pit of her stomach. And then she realizes, oh, crap. I'm wearing a very, very, very noticeable outfit. And indeed she is. She's wearing this beautiful white dress. It has a flower pattern. So she really stands out. She's a young woman. She's pretty cute. So she realizes that, oh man, if I am indeed being stalked, this is not the way to get lost in the crowd. And again, it's getting late, it's evening, but yes, it's summer. People are still out. Definitely people are going to the movies. And so she walks into the movie theater. She ends up sitting by the emergency exit. She tries to relax. The movie theater is not completely full because lots of people are out of the city, like I said. And, they enjoy the sort of the countryside and the fresh air more so than the dust that can accumulate in a large city at this time. And she's not really there for long. She kind of looks around. She gets acclimated to the movie theater. She may be there for 10 minutes or so. Then all of a sudden, she pulls out a pair of pants, a black pair of pants, and she starts pulling on herself right in the movie theater. She's sitting by the emergency exit. Again, it's not packed. And she puts on these pants like right over her dress, her beautiful white dress with a flower print on it. Then she pulls out a black jacket. Middle of summer, hot. Yes, it's getting a little bit chillier at night, but it's July 15th. She puts on this black jacket. Now she's dressed in black from head to toe. A little bit strange. And just within a few minutes of arriving at the movies, she doesn't actually end up watching this movie about post-Napoleonic France. She ends up leaving through the emergency exit. And it's really unclear what happened. Did she feel so paranoid that she had to leave? Was she so concerned about having a stalker? Was this like a suitor that she rejected that had been following her and she was worried that he might have made it to the theater? Did she feel sick? Did she forget something at home? It was really unclear as she just took off from the movie theater and went through the emergency exit. But she didn't actually go to her car. Remember, she arrived at the movies by parking not too far from the movie theater and walking into the building. No. She didn't go to the car. She ended up taking the bus. And then she ended up taking multiple modes of transportation. She took the bus. She took the subway. She took the trolley bus. And then she took a cab. So based on this, it seems like it probably was something about someone, let's say a suitor stalking her, perhaps an unknown stalker. Why else would someone take so many different modes of transportation? What do you think about this?
Well, first of all, I think of Interpol, the game, the table game. But yeah, usual people. I'm from Rio de Janeiro, so we are naturally paranoid.
I think if you live in a big city, especially, you don't know what it's like to be a woman, but you can ask a woman. If you're alone, you're going to the movies, you probably feel, even if it's considered to be a pretty safe city, there's always something in the back of your mind. I think today, especially, some cities are less safe, and you definitely feel almost like this animalistic sense of danger, this alertness, that's a little bit of adrenaline that makes you more aware of your surroundings. Like today, you would not be wearing headphones, for instance, right? Like if I'm a woman, and I'm walking at night, I'm not going to be listening to music because I want to be aware of what's going. If I'm going hiking, I'm not going to be listening to music with head or like earbuds, right? Because I want to know: is there a bear? Is there a giant elk that's going to stomp over me? Is there a mountain lion that's going to jump on my head? So yeah, I think it's really. I don't think it's just Rio, but definitely a large city like Rio. It's probably more prevalent.
Yeah, exactly. In Rio de Janeiro, it doesn't care if you're a woman or a man. If you see two guys on a motorcycle, just
Oh my
run as
gosh.
fast as you can. But yeah, I mean, as paranoid, naturally paranoid from Rio de Janeiro, I would say, well, first of all, our friend who cares. Answer smart.
Who cares is
Yeah,
his name?
that's
Yeah, who cares is
yeah,
the
it's
name for
his
people who
nickname.
don't.
Yeah. So first thing that I think, yeah, of course, you try to get to mix on the crowd, and then get a safe house or a safe place where you have a lot of people and safe exits. And the movie theater thing, that was smart. But
I
then
mean,
a
she's
lot
even
of
carrying
different
extra clothes. She's even carrying
yeah,
extra clothes with her.
yeah, but then a lot of different transportation modes. That's pro.
That
That's
seems a
not
little
being
bit over the
paranoid.
top, right? That seems a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit over the
that's
top. I mean, unless you're really just freaking out that, you might think you do have a stalker, or it might be an, ex-romantic partner who you think is chasing you. You might, take multiple modes of transportation if they're available. And if maybe if your sense of paranoia is so heightened that you might not even be chased by anyone, but you just feel like you really need to get away, and kind of like a deer that's like running in weird directions to get away from a predator. It's almost like that, right? You feel
yeah.
like you're prey.
The immediate thing is you need to go to somewhere safe. You don't need to lose the person. You need to go to somewhere safe. And I mean
Yes.
that the normal person would say, okay, from here I'll call the police. I'll get security on the shopping center or shopping mall or something like that. Call the security, say, oh, this man or this person is following me. That's what. But if you're just running and trying to miss the person, it means that that person is dangerous enough to take down even a security person from a
Right.
shopping mall.
Sure. Or you might be so paranoid that it's sort of getting the better of your kind of rational faculties, and you're just kind of acting on instinct. I need to get away. I need to get away. Well, let me know what you think. She doesn't go to this young woman, now no longer wearing, she's still wearing her white dress, but it's now under black clothing, even though it's summer. It's July 15th, 1977. And, the city does get quite hot in the summer. And although it's not humid, I think to me that would make a difference. It's kind of more of a dry heat as opposed to humidity. Someone who hasn't really lived in humidity, that really kills me. Yeah, and so let me know if you think she did the right thing. She actually ends up getting out by a very large bridge, crossing a river. And it's actually a very deserted area. And by now that she's, it was a movie, she didn't finish it, she's taken multiple modes of transportation. It's now late. It's very dark. This is a very large bridge. It's, kind of a modern type of construction, concrete, steel, crossing the large river that traverses this large city where she lives. And she's now in a very, very deserted area. She's not, this bridge isn't located in the center of the city, but it's actually not in the outskirts either. It's sort of in between. Back then it was in between. It's sort of in the southern part of the city. These days it would be considered more central. There's some prime real estate in this particular area, but back then it was a little bit more south. But by subway, it wasn't really too far, especially by cab in the middle of the night, not too far to get to that particular area. And so, yeah, she is definitely not in a public area. She's in a public area, but not in a crowded public area. She's in the middle of what would have felt like the middle of nowhere, even though it's pretty, fairly central. No one is around. It's very dark. And she ends up climbing to the area that has railroad tracks. This is what she's trying to do right now. So, Marcelo, is this the right thing to do if you feel like you're being stalked, or the wrong thing to do? This is like a movie where you're going into the stalkers, the horror movie, the horror movie villain's lair.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, a normal person would not go to an isolated area, and a train station, or not a train station, but a train track,
By herself in the middle of
railway.
the night.
Yeah, in the middle of the night, it's a desert area. I mean, it's an area that you won't find help from someone else to deal with whatever is
Mhm.
chasing you, or even if you're just paranoid, you're thinking that someone is chasing you. You're not going to find help from others.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
you might
point.
feel more paranoid because it's dark, it's feels abandoned because this is not an area where lots of people would be at in the middle of the night. It's a bridge. It's kind of industrial in that particular location. Yeah, and you're climbing to get to the railroad tracks, and to get to the railroad tracks, you kind of have to go through this area that has a bunch of arches, and it's so dark that particular part of the bridge isn't lit. So as you're going through the arches, it's almost like you're disappearing. So to an outside observer, and this young woman was indeed being observed, so she was right about that. It was almost like she was disappearing, and she wasn't being observed by one person, one potential stalker, as she may have thought. She was being observed by approximately 100 people.
Oh
And
wow.
this 100 people, all located around this bridge, thought they were going to lose her because she was so dark. She was wearing all black. She's like a ninja. And she's going through these arches, and the way the shadows are falling, it's almost like she's not even there. So this group of people, very large group of people, decides that they need to catch this young woman right there and then. And to show her that they're not a gang, a group of thugs that is going to cause tremendous harm to her. Again, she's a young woman. Some of them are actually wearing official uniforms because they are representing the government of this country. And they're heading in the same direction as she is. By then, she had gotten to a particular location. There is a secret hiding place, and she stuffed a package into the secret hiding place. And she's trying to return. And this is when they capture her. And
Mm.
she is screaming very loudly. She is fighting. She knows karate. She's kicking. She's a woman. She's being captured by multiple men. She's actually putting up a very brave fight as this is happening. Ultimately unsuccessful because she's swearing profusely. But she's being captured by these people. And the reason she's screaming is not to alert the potential bystanders that she's about to be really harmed by a group of thugs, but because she's wearing a recording device and a wire with a microphone that a person for whom she left this package would hear her screaming that it's not
Mhm.
safe to come and get this package. So it's not so much her concern for danger and for being harmed herself. She wants to alert the other party. But little does she know, this other party is dead. He is no longer with us. He had chosen, his nickname was Trigon or Trigon. He had chosen a self-exit. He had chosen a self-exit
Mm.
in, some would say, a very brave way, others would say a very weak way. He ended up very quickly poisoning himself in detention, and this poison was provided to him, according to the book I'm using, by the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America. But this young woman doesn't know that Trigon is no longer with us, that he had died, that he had self-exited. For YouTube purposes, I'm using euphemisms here because YouTube doesn't like the other word. Just to
Sorry
just to
about that, folks.
just to explain to people why I'm using such euphemisms. YouTube doesn't like the S word, and yeah, she is basically, her screaming is in vain, and as she's fighting off this group of men, the author of this article, which is part of a book that I'm reading, tries to restrain her because she's using her badass karate moves. And he grabs her by the wrist, and that's the wrist where she's wearing a watch. And he ends up actually snapping the bracelet part of the watch. And lo and behold, a microphone comes out from the bracelet. The broken bracelet revealed where the recording devices, the transmission devices were being held, really tiny ones, obviously. And the woman, as you can probably guess by now, is not just some average woman who is running away from a stalker, an ex-romantic partner, who is just overly paranoid. Her name is Martha Peterson. She is an employee of the United States Embassy in Moscow. She's not just a low-level clerk. She is a vice consul. And at the same time, she too has been working for the Central Intelligence Agency. And Trigon, the man, or Trigon, who had taken himself out, is a highly positioned government official in the Soviet Union's Foreign Affairs Ministry. And he basically was a traitor who turned on his country, and he was working with Miss Peterson, and he was passing on lots and lots of information that he should not have been passing on. So in that way, you can probably imagine that perhaps a very quick self-exit may have been better than the type of punishment someone of his government status and his the level of crimes that he committed against the country, the type of punishment he would have received. I am not entirely sure, but I suspect it would have been the death penalty, because at that time, the Soviet Union did have the death penalty. And I don't want to butcher his full name. His name was Alexander Ogorodnik. And Miss Peterson was captured with all her things, kind of captured red-handed. She was taken to Lubyanka, which is a famous, some people would say infamous, it has a long history, prison in Moscow, or jail, I guess, for an interrogation. And there she was presented with all the things that she had. So the place where she put her package was disguised as a rock. Obviously, they had her broken bracelet from the watch. There are pictures of her online, actually documented for official purposes. She had a wire under her jacket and under her beautiful white dress with flowers on it. It looks very 70s with this kind of funny collar that's very, I think, symptomatic of the fashion at this time. Her package contained a bunch of documents, gold, paper currency, so fiat currency, very, very specialized camera equipment that wouldn't have been available to a mere mortal at this time, and similar types of devices. So she was passing all of this to Trigon, and she did not know that by then he was already gone. And so...
And all this equipment you can find in Amazon now, links on the description.
Right, exactly. You're like, check my affiliate link. Yeah, I don't have any affiliate links, but yes.
Neither do I, but I could not lose the joke.
Yeah, a mere 45 years later, you can go on Amazon and you can purchase this equipment, probably made somewhere in Asia. It's available to the public now. But in 1977, it was not. And so Miss Peterson, nothing happened to her. The KGB and other officials that have caught her red-handed, including the author of the article, whose name is Gennady Zaitsev. His status is the hero of the Soviet Union, so he is sort of a kind of an acclaimed person in his field. And he was also a commander of the Alpha Group, and the Alpha Group was is a super elite group of Spetsnaz. So he was at his professional height in 1977 to 1988, and then the early 90s. So he was sort of starting out in 1977. So he was one of the people that had to dress as a police officer or at least in an official uniform, to show that he's not a thug that is, trying to attack this woman in the middle of the night. So he's the one that's retelling the story. This was published in a publication called Russia Spetsnaz Россия. And he, even though he is describing what in his perception would have been the capture of an enemy spy who was at the same time an U.S. embassy staffer. He writes very respectfully. He compliments her bravery and her karate skills. He compliments her knowledge of presumably Russian language profanity as she's being captured. So it was definitely a very interesting read. And really nothing happened to Miss Peterson. She was deported the very next day. She went back home to America. And the Russian counterparts, of course, summoned the American ambassador, Mr. Toon, and he asked very nicely not to publicize this story because it's not a very good look, which is kind of funny because if you go and Google Martha Peterson, you'll see her book. You'll see lots of articles. You'll see CNN features on her. Now, some of them were made later once she actually sort of retired from the Central Intelligence Agency, which was in the early 2000s. So she was very active with them, it seems like, at least based on this official biographic description for a while. But the lack of publicity kind of makes me smirk a little bit because clearly this has been used for books, for movies. You can find recent podcasts if you go on YouTube and type in her name. Of course, Americans who are recording such podcasts are calling her quote unquote a patriot, quote unquote an American hero. For someone who's not an American, it's, I would say perception is a little bit different. You can, now of course she is working for her government, so, you can use your judgment, but they're also lamenting the death of this traitor, which is very interesting because my opinion on someone who chose to do something like this is quite different. You can, again, use your imagination what I think about Mr. Trigon or Agarodnikov. And yeah, if you literally Google her name, CNN article from 2018, Mom reveals her secret spy life to kids. You could see how this is being marketed. I don't even think I need to comment on that. You go on Amazon, and I actually haven't read her book, but you can learn a lot. Just from the description of the book, and the book has really good reviews, 4.4 stars. The book is called The Widow Spy from 2012. And I'm going to read this so you can kind of arrive at your own conclusion. So this is meant to promote the book. Quote, The Widow Spy is the first-hand account of a true Cold War spy operation in Moscow told exclusively by the CIA case officer who lived this experience. She was one of the first women to be assigned to Moscow, a very difficult operational environment. Her story begins in Laos during the Vietnam War, where she accompanied her husband, a CIA officer. She describes their life in a small town in Laos, ending with the tragic death of her husband. Then her own 30-year career begins in Moscow, where she walks in the dark streets alone, placing dead drops and escaping the relentless eye of the KGB. Experience her arrest and detention in Lubyanka prison, as only she can relate it. What she reveals in The Widow Spy has never been told. So you can gather a lot from that one paragraph, Marcelo. The fact that she married a CIA spy who ends up doing, I'm going to imagine, not very nice things in Laos during the Vietnam War. I mean, I don't think we need to go into too much detail about the type of slaughter that occurred in Southeast Asia, thanks to the American involvement, the containment policy, the domino theory that if one state falls to communism, every other state will too, completely disregarding the decolonization sort of policies and struggles that were happening in this region and other regions too. So perhaps her husband's death was tragic. Again, I haven't read this particular book, but it's, for me personally, in my opinion, it's kind of hard to have a positive impression of someone who is working for an intelligence agency in the context of that particular war. So I don't know what you think about this, but
yeah, I mean, we know that those people are not there for jokes. They're not there for collecting information. Those are the analysts.
Not handing out cookies. Oh wait, sometimes handing out cookies also has a sinister motive.
Every now and then.
Every now and then, it's just cookies are not just cookies.
Exactly. I cannot judge, of course, the type of things because only her and the agency would know the
Well,
kind
she
of
was not the
things.
one doing it, it was her husband in Vietnam. But then she also ended up being, well,
That's
I'm
what she
trying to,
tells.
well, right, of course. This is, well, I think she probably would. I mean, if she's publishing her book about her Russian adventure, it seems that, I mean, she was born in 1945. So in 1977, she would have been quite young. So
Hmm.
the Vietnam War, remember, 1973, the accords were signed and it was officially over in 1975. So it sounds like she would have been very young. So I'm not sure. She might have been starting out. Again, I haven't read this book. I'm just speculating, but she might have just had that interest because of her husband. I just kind of want to like separate her a little bit from what her husband was doing, because she seems to have been too young, but maybe I'm
Hmm.
wrong. But again, whenever you see the Vietnam War and you see the name of the triple letter agency, and this agency is operating in that region, it's probably not something something rainbows, unicorns, and roses. Let's put it this
Yeah.
way.
Look, even delivering cookies and muffins or whatever, that's extremely bad for the country. People, just we talk. I talked with Larry Johnson here several times, and he says that the modus operandi, you want to get an asset from the country, you give whatever you want, and this person just gives you the country.
Yeah.
That's basically the deal. He
Hmm.
mentioned things, with strip clubs and stuff like that. And this person, just because of a tiny little thing,
Hmm.
just gives away the country. That's what happened recently in Brazil with all
Mm.
the corruption scandals that were judged in Brazil by some irrelevant judge from an irrelevant city, and it broke the country.
Right. I
How
feel
many
like
people die because of
there
that?
might be, I mean, let's say there might be a small percentage of these people whom the country would consider, the government of the country would consider a traitor. They might have true ideological motivations, maybe.
No,
But
sure.
I would say most of those people are, there's something off about them, not maybe psychologically, but personality wise. There might be a little bit of a psychopathic streak in them, a little bit of an antisocial streak in them, where they're more interested in the things, right, that they're getting for their work, for cooperation. And it's
But that's part
basically,
of the training program. Turning
sure.
these people into that is part of the training
Well, I
program.
think there's probably something within them to begin with, in order to even be interested in that. And again, there might be a small percentage that has that ideological conviction and might be doing it for that reason. But I would say in many cases, it's more of a pure greed, self-interest, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe some of those people, there's, dirty videos about them or whatever. That's also, another factor. We're very much generalizing right now, right? But yeah, it's really kind of interesting how people like that could be perceived. But I think the other interesting thing in this description, I'm just going to jump back in here. You see how prominently the fact that she is one of the first females working for this agency in that particular role, especially in Moscow, which they describe as a quote unquote very difficult operational environment. Yeah, one of the first women, and so she's quite young at this time. So I think there's almost this like girl power element to this, like a kind of a weird feminist way of promoting this female, embassy staffer slash spy because she is a woman. And so I think just the way they're promoting her, like, oh, on the one hand, she had this, in their opinion, badass husband who tragically died in Laos doing very nice things, right? And at the same time, she's one of the first women doing something, probably a difficult job, right, to do something like this in a foreign country. So it's almost like, yeah, they're promoting her as this, as this like feminist superhero, which I always think of, contemporary memes about, bombs being dropped from planes labeled with rainbow flags because they're so egalitarian, but they're still doing the same thing. So it's almost like along the same lines, right? She's so badass because she's a woman, and to a certain extent, you can maybe appreciate that if you don't have the full context. But it's pretty interesting how that type of story is being promoted. Or like in the CNN article, she's just a mom with kids, and at the same time, she's a spy. It's like Superman is like this nerdy dude. I never watched Superman by day, right? And by night, he's this badass superhero. So it's almost like that type of a trope that's being applied to a real person working, not just, let's say, in the military, but in a very particular agency that has very particular intentions when they are in foreign countries. So it's not just about defending their own country. It has very particular intentions about other countries that are very well documented from lots and lots of declassified documents. So I thought that was also very interesting, the way this person is being promoted because she's a woman, because you wouldn't have that type of promotion about he's just a dad, but at the same time he's a badass agent for the triple letter agency. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't really have.
Depends. You have that movie with was it Jenny with the Schwarzenegger and Jimmy.
I don't watch mainstream. Well, these days I don't have any time for movies, but I'm just not very familiar with mainstream movies. So
that's a very old movie. Back in the time of Hollywood was decent.
Oh, okay, very old. Maybe. But I think usually
Jimmy Curtis.
Is the way. Oh, okay, yeah. I think. Oh, you mean like a Gentleman Prefer Blondes? Oh, from like way back then.
Way back then.
Okay.
Schwarzenegger was still a man, not an old dude.
Schwarzenegger was still a man. Okay. Maybe not back then. Maybe then the 80s if it was Schwarzenegger. But but you know what I'm saying? Usually you wouldn't have men who are working for these organizations presented, humanized, right, to the public as just an average Joe, your barbecuing dad on the weekend who has this badass side job of taking down the Viet Cong in Laos or something like that, right? So it's very specific, I think, to women that she's so cool. She's just a mom. She has children, but at the same time, she's like, she's finding these traitors in big bad Moscow and passing on secret camera equipment and bars of gold to them. You know what I'm saying? So it's really interesting.
She eats Russians for breakfast.
She eats Russians for breakfast. The Soviets. The Soviets. She eats them for breakfast. The commies, yeah, the dirty commies, she eats them for breakfast. Yeah, but it's really interesting. I mean, it seems like she's still, this book might be worth reading. I mean, maybe not reading it, just swallowing every piece of ideology that's in there, but just as a historic document. I think to me, reading articles by this officer who was, obviously very involved in the Cold War from this perspective, to me, this was very interesting. And so I think it would be interesting to read the other side too. And I don't think her story from the Russian/Soviet perspective is really known, whereas the book, again, it's not known to everyone, but it's known to a certain circle of people who would be interested in this type of historic, quasi-autobiographic literature with a touch of, history, very specific events. So I think it's definitely worth looking into. So I don't know the way that she, I think officially when she was captured, they claimed that she was hurt, but if you listen to this story, she's using karate kicks on them, and they're really trying not to do anything again because she's a woman and there's like dozens of them, but they still break her watch because she's punching and she's kicking and she's swearing. You can kind of understand where maybe she was hurt a little bit, but it sounds like she's okay. And she's had speaking opportunities and book publishing deals, et cetera, out of this. So yeah.
I like the part when the guy compliment her profanity in Russian.
Yeah, it's really kind of funny. So I don't know how much. I mean, it sounds like she was only there for 2 years before this happened. But he complimented her bravery again because she was alone and there are all these people there. But he writes, Madam Peterson bravely fought our operatives who were searching for a small reconnaissance receiver attached to her body. This is my translation of the Russian, while screaming loudly so as to warn the agent responsible for picking up her package. And so end quote. And then in another spot, he talks about how well she knew karate and how well she knew profanity. Again, I'm assuming it's not in English that she's screaming. Yeah, it says, quote unquote, Madam Vice Consul demonstrated brilliant knowledge of profanity and karate, In terms of classification, she ranked 6 Dan. I don't know karate, but I'm assuming the 6 Dan is high. Quote, end quote. Yeah. So
the 6 Dan it's already 6 times bigger than the black belt.
Yeah. So, again, so born in 1945, this is 1977, right? So she's in her, so she came there, she just turned 30, right? I'm assuming, or somewhere around there. I don't know her exact birthday. And so 2 years later, right? So she's in her early 30s. She's a badass karate chick whose husband has already tragically, heroically been killed in Laos for handing out cookies, unicorns, and rainbows. And and she seems to know Russian profanity. And I just found this story really fascinating because, again, I think people kind of see the other side. So I wanted to, and I did this translation a while back. This is not something I did recently, but it's something that I kind of periodically look into because it's really kind of fascinating to read about this period. And
it's always very interesting to get this type of history to picture the times, and your narration today was simply fantastic. I was actually picturing, like an old movie, like an old good movie from Hollywood, picturing the scene of her running around and trying to
going where she's not
supposed
to go. Don't go to the old bridge by yourself in the middle of the night wearing all black.
You kind of remind me Gotcha. I don't know if you remind this movie from Hollywood as well, where,
I know what the movie is, but yeah, it's, I think...
If you guys know the movie, comment here.
I see there are a lot of comments, but obviously I can't read them as I'm talking. Were there any questions, or was it just comments?
Well, there was a good request from Who Cares, and I enjoy a lot to say his nickname. Next video, teach us to curse in Russian.
Oh my goodness. This is the one video that'll get me the clicks. It's like none of the deeply researched historic videos, interviews with people that I really investigated get me the clicks. Teaching to curse in Russian, that's the one that's going to get us the clicks. The history, the history and the development and the etymology of Russian language profanity as it relates to other Slavic languages. We can call it that. Make it very intellectual.
There was an interesting comment from Gang Stalking Insider. My father was one of the inventors of impulse technology used in impulse weapons of the new generations. Harassment and calling me spy was a normal thing. Gang stalking is a normal thing.
Wow. That's hardcore. Interesting.
That's gang stalking is a normal thing in Rio de Janeiro, and you don't have to invent impulse technology.
To invent anything. It just kind of happens. It just happens to you. You just have to live there. Yeah. You're such an anti-promoter of tourism in your country, Marcelo. You better, or maybe this is a
Rio de Janeiro. Just
maybe you're trying to get people not to go there, but really, it's a really nice place to visit.
Well, no, I mean, go there. Just be safe.
In the daytime.
Be safe and remember to learn karate 6 Dan and to curse in Portuguese.
Curse in Portuguese, yeah. Kick, scream into a recording device / reconnaissance / your wire or whatever kids use these days. I'm not up to date with my technology as far as spying goes, but yes, definitely. Well, thank you for listening, guys. I hope you like our story times. I think in the next little while, we'll give you some interviews, conversations that you'll really enjoy. And happy holidays if you're celebrating this week in Canada and the US respectively. And we will see you very soon.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to both channels, and see you next week, hopefully.
Yes. See you next week. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.